Good afternoon, everybody. This is Zachary Ring from Thea Enterprises. This is part 3 of our lighting design series. I'm really excited about today's session because I feel like it really closes the loop. It really ties everything together. If you're new and you haven't caught parts 1 and part 2, they are available as recordings, and we're probably going to run this series again in the future. So we'll make sure that we send all the recordings and the handouts out to everybody after this. But in part 1, we covered the principles. In part 2, we talked about applying those principles to specific applications in a residential space. And now we're going to take specific products and take a look at those applications and start to insert products into those different spaces. And one thing I want to stress is, parts 1 and parts 2, that's where we are really educating you about lighting design and the process. Where now we're showing you a tool, so you can see here, this is a brochure. You can actually take this document and use this as a sales tool. So today we're really going to highlight how you want to use this tool and how to effectively use this sales tool. So as we're having this conversation with you today, try to imagine yourself having this same kind of conversation with your clients. And today with us, we have a new face. Patricia is with us today. She's the specification manager for the lighting division of Thea Enterprises. And she's going to be the main presenter today. She actually developed this brochure and really put a lot of time into this. And just before I forget, this brochure is available as a handout. So there's a handout section where there's the brochure, and there's also a fixture schedule template that can be very useful. And then we have Joe from Breakthrough Lighting. If you're on parts 1 and parts 2, you know Joe. He is a lighting designer that we work with quite frequently. And he was the one who really explained the principles and everything else. So we don't want to forget about all the value that Joe and other lighting designers can provide. And if you're not working with somebody in a future project, definitely be sure to grab Joe's contact information. He's a great resource to have. So I'm actually going to let Joe speak for a few minutes just to tell us about himself, kind of recap what we've talked about, and then talk about why he thinks that this is a valuable tool, and then we'll hand it over to Patricia. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Zach, and thanks everybody for making the time to be with us this morning, or afternoon, I should say. So as Zach mentioned, I'm just going to give you a little recap of where we've been and how we got to where we are and why we need to be here at this juncture. So in part 1 of the series, we talked about the principles of lighting, and we sort of took you inside the mind of a lighting designer and showed you some of the principles that they apply into the spaces that they illuminate, right? So we showed you a little bit about how to create layers, the methods that you use to do that, the different platforms that you can use in terms of recessed lighting, which was the primary focus, as well as accent and decorative lighting. In part 2, what we did was we gave you more of an architectural integration focus. So how do we take all those principles, how do we take all those little bag of tricks that lighting designers have and actually apply them into a space? And we gave you some visual examples on how you can do that, how you can take it into a real world application. And so I'm really excited about today, and Patricia's going to give us a great presentation, because now we're going to get a little more technical in terms of using actual parts from the real world, right? And she's going to show you how you can use the specific brands from Thea Enterprises lighting division to be able to do this. There's a lot of resources available, not just from me, from the design standpoint, but also from the product support standpoint in terms of samples, in terms of special installation instructions or anything that you may need, where Patricia would be able to come in and be very instrumental for you. So between the two of us, we pack a 1-2 punch, and we're just excited to be able to button everything up with this part 3 of the presentation. So without any further ado, we'll pass it on to Patricia, and she'll take it from here.
Thank you, John Zach. Again, I'm Patricia Vallejo. I'm with Thea Enterprises. And as they previously mentioned, I'm going to be reviewing this document with you. And really understanding how to use the previously mentioned effects in an actual project. So this is a quick overview of what we will be discussing today. We're going to start with a questionnaire, move into a quick introduction of our manufacturers, and a full line card, including some information from Joe. And then we're going to dive into a case study. So we're going to be breaking it down by space type, and really talking about the lighting strategies and different lighting specifications that are applied against different space types, and finally closing with a fixture schedule. So as we start a project, it's really good to have a very clear understanding of what your client's needs are. So we have put together this questionnaire for you to be able to start a conversation with them. This is not including all the questions that you may have, and they're probably gonna be follow-up questions as you dig through some of these. But it's kind of a guideline just to start a conversation and really start understanding the architectural style of the space that you're trying to design, as well as the client's personal preferences. So some of the questions that are really important here are brightness level questions, for instance, and these could be applied to every single space type. So I'm not really going to look at every single question, but a few that are interesting are: is the kitchen an extension of the entertainment space, or is it only used for preparation services? This is really important because it's going to tell you how to spend your lighting budget. You might not have as many layers of light or decorative fixtures if you are not using it as an entertainment space, for instance. Another thing that's important is art lighting. Not everyone is an art collector, but it's important that you understand the locations and sizes of the art pieces, especially specifically if you're using directed lighting or picture lighting for these. And if you have any conservation requirements for any art pieces, I recommend you engage Joe, because he would really be able to guide you with his expertise to really understand what is required. There are very specific requirements for that type of lighting in terms of UV exposure, time of exposure, and light levels. And we also have included some general questions and controls questions, which start hinting at the idea of a color temperature and whether your client would have a preference for a tunable system or a color saturated system. These are very important, and we'll be referencing back to some of these questions as we move forward. We have prepared a quick poll just so you can gain an understanding of how polarizing some of these questions are. So I'm going to hand it off to Zach for the poll.
Yeah, so we're going to run a brief poll here. We're actually going to ask you some of these questions because we really like to show how diverse some of these answers can be. So you should see a poll on your screen here, and it says, in the living/dining area, do you prefer high, average, or low brightness? So go ahead and answer that now. You can also see who's paying attention. All right, so see a bit of a trend here. We'll give it about 5 more seconds, and then I'm going to close the poll and take a look at the results. All right, so here are the results. A bit of a trend. We have average, and I'm going to let Patricia expand on that for a minute.
So it's very interesting because average, what does that really mean, right? So in my experience, it's really good to either visit the current space where your clients live, or visit the job site, whatever is accessible, and really have them show you what they mean by average or what they mean by low or high light levels. Because you don't want to be stuck in a scenario where you don't have enough brightness in the space, and then you have to open ceilings or that sort of thing. But you also don't want to overlight the space, and then maybe your control system doesn't allow for very deep levels of dimming. So those are considerations that you should know. And if there is no opportunity to walk this space that they live in currently, you could always ask them for reference images so that you can really understand what they mean by this brightness level.
Awesome.
We're going to go with another question.
Yep, we have one more here. And this one, it's another preferential question. What is your preference for the color tone of light? Warm, like incandescent, neutral, or cooler, like daylight? And then there's also an all of the above answer by using a tunable white solution. All right, I see the votes coming in now. It's always interesting to see these results. I'm going to go ahead and close this and share the results with everybody. All right. What do you think, Patricia?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. We're seeing a trend in people wanting to have more tunability of their environment, specifically the one that they live in. And what's interesting is, of course, now you're going to gain an understanding of what people want, but also can they afford it? So there's always like a back and forth in terms of that, and an education that you can start giving your clients. You know, having tunability does come at a premium, but maybe there's a happy medium where you have tunability in some spaces and then others might not need them, such as maybe a bathroom that's a transitional space. Or you could end up with a warm dimming solution where it's not fully tunable, you don't have independent control of intensity and color temperature, but it's again giving you a little bit of that idea of the changing of the color temperature throughout the day.
All right, so you can jump back into the PowerPoint now. Thanks everybody for your participation.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry. Okay, so we wanted to give you a quick overview of our manufacturers, and this is sort of like a cheat sheet for you to use. And it really tells you where the different manufacturers land in terms of this spectrum of decorative architectural controls, and also which fixtures are appropriate for outdoor use and indoor use. And in the document that's distributed to you, this all will be linked. So you can click on them on a PDF, on the PDF, and it would redirect you to their websites. And also the more expanded line card here. So this also gives you quick understanding of what each manufacturer's offerings are, and also some information for Joe with breakthrough lighting and other solutions such as Sonnen, which is it's a more energy solution. So I'm going to get right into this case study here. As you can see, the project that we've selected is a very simple, clean architecture, contemporary, open space plan. And because of that, the lighting design should complement the architecture. And as you can see here, we are using minimal recessed fixtures. So we want to minimize the apertures that we have in the ceilings. And we're emphasizing more of the use of linear elements which illuminate vertical surfaces, as well as some indirect lighting with coves and some decorative accents. So we've broken this out by space type. And something that Joe had previously mentioned in the previous webinar was this idea of creating different layers of illumination. And the idea behind that is to help the user of the space understand the hierarchy and also help them focus on different areas of the space. So here we're looking at a kitchen. And as you can see in the top images, the color temperature of the light is different in the two scenes. And this is supported by a tunable solution. So for instance, this gives you the opportunity to have the light complement daylight as the day progresses, and it also helps us create different scenes and moods. So on the left side, you can see the brightness of the counter is higher than on the right side, while the color temperature on the right is cooler. So maybe the right scene is set for cooking, while on the left we were eating or having breakfast. So I'm going to go ahead and start breaking down the different layers of illumination of this space. So we're starting with small linear fixtures that are integrated into cabinetry, and these are used to illuminate the countertop, so they provide additional task lighting. A general layer of illumination that we're using is a linear architectural slot, and the intent here is to illuminate the vertical wall, and it really bounces light off of the wall into the space, and also creates a backdrop to the space. One of the questions that we had in the questionnaire before was, where is the artwork located, and what are the sizes of the artwork? In this case, we're assuming that there's either a large piece, or that we know there's going to be artwork in this location, but we don't know the specific size. So we have chosen wall washers, so we're illuminating the entire surface. But if you had a piece that's small, or that has texture or some sort of sculpture, then you might want to choose something that has a tighter beam optic and adjustability. In the kitchen, we want to illuminate the counter to make sure that we can see what we're eating and what we're preparing. But in this case, we don't need adjustability because we know that the furniture is not going to move around, it's fixed. So it is very important in the early stages to really have all the information that you can from the client or the architect, and really understand how furniture is laid out. So we're integrating a linear fixture under the breakfast counter here as well, and this is helping us render this as a volume. Even though this is an open floor plan, we still want to understand this as a space, so we have integrated a ceiling cove delineating this as its area. In order to illuminate the dining table, we have a decorative pendant, and we're supplementing with more light using fixed downlights, and this is really helping us illuminate the tabletop. And finally, we are using linear fixtures integrated into shade pocket to connect the spaces. So how are we doing this? We're using a Ketra G2 in an architectural slot. So as you can see here in this quick detail, we are aligning the center of the fixture with the architectural opening of that detail. And this is really to illuminate the surface, the vertical surface, while eliminating any spill light that we might have on the floor. So we're really using the vertical surface to bounce off the light off. And we have specified a tight beam optic, but because what we want to do is really push light out all the way down this wall. Wherever we have millwork or furniture where we want to integrate lighting, we're using the Ion AT series with a tunable LED engine. And the intent here is really to have a small profile as possible to really, because we want to channel into this furniture. So we want to have something that's very small. And because of that, we have remote drivers, which we would need to coordinate the location for. In this particular case, we have pushed it all the way to the back of that backsplash. And as you can see, this finish here doesn't have any texture, so we don't have any harsh shadows. But if you had something that's very textured, you might want to pull that fixture to the front face of the cabinet and provide a lip to hide it from direct view. In this case, it's also important to understand the finishes. And if you have a glossy finish, you definitely want to push for fixture that allows for diffusing of the LED diode, so you don't have any lamp imaging or anything like that. Wherever we have recessed downlights, we are using the Ketra D3 family of downlights, which has a fixed adjustable wall wash option. Over the table, we are using the Kundalini Lana and Ketra A lamps. I think most of you are probably familiar with Ketra. So the intent here is to really have full tunability of this color temperature, as well as have some opportunity to create saturated environments for special events. So Ketra gives us that opportunity, and it also communicates wirelessly back to the control system. So it's very versatile in that sense, especially when it comes to decorative pieces, because we can integrate this A20 lamp with any fixture that allows for a medium screw base or for a twist and lock base. So it really allows us to really encompass the whole lighting design within this umbrella of tunability. And then finally, we have the same form factor of the G2, but in this case, we're using it in a cove. And as you can see here, we're again aligning the lip of that cove with the top of the fixture. And we have provided a wide beam optic to really push light as far out as possible. And the intent of aligning this here is so if you're standing far away from the room, you don't have direct view of the fixture, but you are also not casting any shadows in the ceiling. So moving on to the living room, again, creating different layers of illumination. We have different fixtures here. So we are starting with a recess mounted magnetic system, and this gives us the ability to have linear elements that are providing general illumination to the space, and also add some accent lighting with this track to illuminate any special architectural finishes or elements, and also furniture. We have decorative accents, and this is again giving us a little more, another layer of illumination, and also giving the space some character. The assumption here again is that we have artwork in this location, but we don't know the size of it, so we're just washing the entire surface. We have a small recess downlight integrated into this reading nooks, and this is providing additional task lighting for reading, and also giving us a little bit of a more intimate setting. And then finally integrating linear elements into millwork, creating visual interest. In this case, we're pushing the fixtures all the way back, and you'll see a reference image next. So how are we doing this? We have the modular pista. As mentioned before, we were assuming a recess mounted fixture, but this can also be suspended or surface mounted, as you see here in these two images. And it can come in different finishes. So if the architecture is mainly white and you don't want to have any contrast, you would specify the white finish, but it also has some different accents. So as you can see here, it has a gold reflector. So it kind of brings a little bit of a decorative flair. If you have a high ceiling and you wanted to suspend this fixture, you could also integrate an uplight to this to have a little another layer of an illumination. Again, where we have any downlighting, we're using the Ketra D3 family. In this nooks, we have the modular Smart 1.9 series. These are very shallow and small, and they work with Lutron drivers and can be daisy chained back to the drivers. For the decorative floor lamp, we have the Kundalini Kushi XL, and it's all equipped again with a Ketra 20 lamp. And in this reading nooks, we have some shelving. So we are locating the AT Ion series all the way back to create a linear element for your eye to draw into. And the continuation of the Ketra G2 that we had from coming from the kitchen. In the master suite and guest room corridors. Again, we're continuing with this idea of creating different layers of illumination. So we're starting with linear elements integrated into the millwork, a decorative piece that's in the center of the room, ceiling coves. In this case, we have a rectangular arrangement to really emphasize the geometry of the space and provide indirect general illumination. For closets, we have small surface mount fixtures. Depending on the size of the space, you would either mount this on the ceiling or they could be mounted above the door on the wall. And carrying the same concept of illuminating vertical surfaces with this linear shade pocket. Wall washers or adjustable fixtures illuminate any furniture and artwork. And finally, to round off the master bedroom, we have decorative table lamps that are providing individual control of the reading lighting. In this case, I find it very, very useful to have the individual control because people might have different preferences in terms of light levels or color temperature for that. And in the corridors, we have, again, recessed downlighting to illuminate any artwork and linear fixtures in a pocket to illuminate the vertical surface, providing general illumination. And if you had a special finish, this would also emphasize that. And finally, in the bathrooms, we have located recessed adjustable downlights in strategic locations over the plumbing to provide task illumination. So for instance, here we have this fixture aimed at the mirror to bounce light off the mirror and illuminate someone's face. But if your client had a very specific need for a brighter environment for any task such as shaving or applying makeup, you might want to supplement with sconces or an illuminated mirror. And some people like to do downlights over the shower, but I personally find that a little bit inappropriate because sometimes you're looking up in the shower and you don't want to see a light source. So we're integrating a linear solution. In this case, this is a web-rated fixture, and it's again integrated into an architectural pocket, illuminating that tile work on the shower, and also gives you the opportunity to highlight any special finishes. So we have, again, the Ketra G2 in these two different applications with different optics. The Ion AT series integrated into the millwork. In this case, we have pulled the fixture to the front face and given it a lip. So we're really front lighting any elements that are in these cubbies. We have the page 1 Luna at the center of the space as a decorative piece with a Ketra A lamp. And then again, the Ketra D3 family of fixtures, Kushi table lamp from Kundalini with a Ketra A20. So again, here you can tune the color temperature or intensity to your individual needs. And finally, the Tempo Clip 4X, in this case, a wet rated version. And as you can start seeing here, there are different optic options depending on the texture of the wall or how or the finish of the wall. You might want to pick a different optic. In the entry stairs and exterior, again, continuing this idea of creating different layers of illumination and really supporting the use of the space. So we really want to make sure that we have enough light on the actual steps to avoid any tripping hazards. And so we are looking at an exterior sconce here that's marking the entrance and illuminating the building address. If you had many column elements, you could create repetition with this and really emphasize the architecture. So it's again supporting the architectural intent. We have wall recessed step lights here. In this case, they are exterior rated, and we're using them both in the interior and exterior to connect the two spaces and make sure that we have enough illumination on the steps. We have recessed downlights with a decorative trim that's projecting below the ceiling surface to illuminate the canopy. Adjustable downlights that are aimed at furniture, artwork, and the entryways. And finally, a dramatic pendant that's really taking use of the double height space over the stairs. So we have the performance and lighting quasar fixture here. This is shown with a direct and indirect distribution, but it could also be just direct or just indirect. And again, we can create repetition and have different optics if we wanted to push light towards the sidewalk. For instance, we have different distributions that can do that as well. The performance in lighting insert 0 is a very small fixture, again, wet rated, but it's used in both indoor outdoor locations in this case. The DMF square frame with decorative trim, again, it's dropping below the ceiling and illuminating that horizontal surface to really create a plane of light. And the Ketra D3, in this case, an adjustable. And finally, the Kundalini Do chandelier. So we wanted to share a fixture schedule with you. This is not including all of the fixtures that we've looked at today, but it is for you to use as a tool to really understand what information is important to include in a light fixture schedule. And so for instance, we have the manufacturer here with the catalog number. This is important so that you can order the fixtures. But a couple of things that are important as you share information with your client are these two here. So location and description. The location is really going to tell you where the fixture is, obviously. And this is also important to know. For instance, above the counters, you would have a tighter beam optic, 25-degree. You might have a linear spread lens to really illuminate the entire counter without creating hotspots. So all of that is going to be captured under the description, and it's easy to understand for anybody that's trying to see where, you know, what was the intent of that actual fixture. And it also captures additional information in terms of source control. That is something that you would need to coordinate for the system that's controlling the lighting, and some notes of how it gets integrated into the architecture. So again, this is going to be provided to you as a template as well. And in the future, we will be discussing how this actually gets filled out. But I'm going to hand this back to Zach for any questions and to wrap up.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, I just want to invite Joe back on here, maybe so he can add some closing thoughts after taking a look at all this information and maybe talk about where he can still fit into this picture. Joe?
Absolutely, guys. Thanks. Good job, Patricia. And so just by way of you know, kind of summarizing everything that we've discussed up until this point, as you can see, there are a lot of resources. You may have seen products today that you probably previously didn't know about or didn't know that you may have been able to use. As you know, with lighting, sometimes things can get a little bit complex. If you have a small room and just trying to create a small cove accent or something like that, it could be pretty straightforward, and you may be able to do it just by getting the right measurements and ordering your lights. In other cases, you may need to pinpoint things a little more surgically, right? Be a little more accurate in the way you do things. So that would be a situation where a service like us could come in and sort of measure performance ahead of time, give you some 3D renderings based on, you know, what we call photometric calculations to look at the uniformity of lighting throughout the space that you're trying to illuminate, those type of things. And we can also walk you through a lot of the documentation that you need to generate, right? In future sessions, we're going to get a little bit deeper into that. But if you have some immediate needs where you have to have very detailed documentation, including things like load schedules and so forth, that's the type of value add that Breakthrough Lighting brings. And one of the reasons why we partner with Thea Enterprises was to be able to deliver a full solution to you guys, a full service solution. So feel free to reach out. Also, as a reminder, there are links available because all of these sessions have been recorded. Zach can give you more information about that, or you can reach out to me at info@breakthroughlighting.com. It's that simple. Any job whatsoever, whether you're at the beginning stage, whether there's an existing plan and you just need to optimize or reconfigure a few things. No job is too simple or too complex. We're here to help. Just give us a ring and we'll do what we can to walk you through it. So that's it for me. Thanks again, guys. It's been a pleasure, and I'll pass it on back to Zach here.
I just wanted to say thanks on behalf of Thea for joining us today and on the other sessions. We alluded to this, but we are going to have another part to this series. So this was the first trilogy. There's definitely going to be another trilogy coming where we're going to continue this process. We didn't want to get into the weeds with how to actually create this fixture schedule today, but what we're going to do next is examine the cut sheets from different manufacturers and teach you how to find key information to add into your fixture schedule. Then we're going to talk about, once you have the fixture schedule, how to go from schedule to PO, and then PO to delivery, and managing the installation process and working through everything from start to finish, because the goal here is to have all of you embrace lighting and make that a big part of your business. We've all been doing controls, and many of you have been doing shades for years, and this is really the next frontier, is making lighting a big part of your business. And I think it's only obvious that we need to do this because, as you saw on today with the poll, everybody wants tunable now. The second that you want tunable, it becomes more complicated and you need a more complex control system. And you guys are the ones already providing the control system, so why not just provide the entire solution? And I think what's unique here is, we're trying to lead with Ketra and insert Ketra wherever we can, but we wanted to put this together to show how you can really surround the job and be able to provide all the fixtures in the key areas of the home and really own this process from start to finish. And since it is newer for everybody, that's why we really want to spell everything out from start to finish. So if you missed parts 1 and parts 2, go back and watch that, catch up on part 3, and then when we release parts 4, 5, and 6, we can literally go through the whole process, whether it's your first, second, or third job. We just want you to be careful or comfortable, and definitely be careful when you're specifying this stuff. But we don't want you to run into any walls or roadblocks or anything like that. We're here to help you through the entire process, and Joe's here as well. I'm going to send out a follow-up email with Joe's info, and if you didn't grab the PDFs and the handout sections, I'll make sure to include those and recordings of all 3 sessions. So thanks again, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.